course, be traced back to the same pattern. But the point I would like to emphasize, and this is really one of the two important points in my talk, is that though the pattern is essentially the same, yet in the first case, in the Greek example, I wish I were the knight, what the poet makes us feel is his tenderness, his anxiety. In the second, we feel a kind of divine indifference to things human. And in the third, the knight, the familiar knight, becomes a nightmare. And now, let us take another pattern, a different one. Let us take the idea of time flowing even as a river does. And the first example comes out of a poem that Tennyson wrote when he was, I think, 13 or 14. Then he destroyed it. But happily for us, a line survives, a single line. I think you can find it in Tennyson's biography written by Andrew Lang. And the line is this: time flowing in the middle of the night. I think that Tennyson has chosen his time very wisely, because all things are silent, men are sleeping, and yet time is flowing noiselessly on. This is one example. There is also a novel, I'm sure you're thinking of it, called simply Time and the River. And the mere putting together of the two words suggests the metaphor. Time and the river, they both flow on. And then we have, of course, that famous sentence of the Greek philosopher about no man steps down twice to the same river. And here we have a beginning of terror, because at first we think of the river as flowing on. The drops of water are different. And then we are made to feel that we are the river, that we are as fugitive as the river. And we have, of course, those verses by Manrique: nuestras vidas son los ríos que van a dar en la mar, que es el morir. Our lives are the rivers that flow into that sea, death. This statement is not too impressive in English. I wish I could remember how Longfellow translated it in his coplas de Manrique. But of course, and we shall go into this question in another lecture, of course, behind the stock metaphor, we have the grave music of the words. Nuestras vidas son los ríos que van a dar en la mar, que es el morir. Allá van los señoríos, derechos hacia acabar y consumir, and so on. But the metaphor, of course, is exactly the same in these cases. And now we will go on to something very trite, something that may cause you to smile. The comparison of women to flowers and of flowers to women also. Here, of course, there are far too many easy examples. But there is one I would like to recall. Perhaps it may not be familiar to you, from that unfinished masterwork, Robert Louis Stevenson's Weir of Hermiston. Stevenson tells of his hero going into a church in Scotland. And then he sees a girl a lovely girl we're made to feel. And one feels that he's already beginning to fall in love with her, that he's about to fall in love with her. Because he looks at her, and then he thinks whether there is an immortal soul within that beautiful frame, or whether she is a mere animal, the color of flowers. And the brutality of the word animal is of course destroyed by the color of flowers. I don't think we need any other examples of this pattern. Of course, it can be found in all ages, in all tongues, in all literatures. And now we will go on to another of the essential patterns of metaphor. The pattern of life being a dream. The feeling that comes over us of life being a dream. And the evident example that comes to us is we are such stuff as dreams are made on. Now, it may sound like a blasphemy, but I love Shakespeare too much to care about that. But I think that here, if we care to look at it, and I don't think we should look at it too closely, we should rather be grateful to Shakespeare for this and his many other gifts. If we care to look at it, I think there is a very slight contradiction between the fact of our lives being dreamlike, or having a dreamlike essence in them, and the rather sweeping statement, we are such stuff as dreams are made on. Because if we are really dreams, or if we are merely dreamers of dreams, then I wonder if we can make such sweeping statements. I mean, this sentence of Shakespeare belongs rather to philosophy or to metaphysics than to poetry, though of course it is heightened, it is lifted up into poetry by the context. And now I will take another example of the same pattern by a great German poet, a minor poet besides Shakespeare, but I suppose all poets are minor besides 2 or 3 of them. I remember reading that very famous piece by Walter von der Vogelweide, and I suppose I should say it thus. I wonder how my Middle German goes, but you'll excuse me. Is mir mein Leben geträumet, oder ist es wahr? Have I dreamt my life, or was it a true one? And I think that this comes nearer to what the poet is trying to say, because instead of a sweeping affirmation, we have a question. The poet is wondering. This has happened to all of us, but we have not worded it as Walter von der Vogelweide did. He's asking himself, is mir mein Leben geträumet, oder ist es wahr? And this hesitation gives us that dreamlike essence of life, I think.